Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are in the midst of the 2040 to 2041 offseason. Made a few moves so far. We've definitely changed our pitching staff. We made a trade for Greg Gaylord, who think can be a starter, or particularly we think he can be a very effective right-handed reliever for us. And then we also, as a free agent, signed Hugo Macias, who we think can be a pretty decent reliever for us as well. As far as our lineup, the big move we've made is we made a trade for first baseman Adrian Oliva. Career 300 hitter, just won the American League batting title. In the final year of his contract, Tampa wanted to get rid of him. They were willing to hold on to a chunk of his contract. So he's going to take over as our first baseman next season. Love the fact that he's durable. Love the fact that he's a really good contact hitter. Plays decent defense for first base. Just a one-year rental for us, but we haven't had to put a lot of money into it. So think that he could be a nice addition to hopefully help improve our offense, which is where we needed some work last season. Had one of the worst offenses in all of the National League, which more than offset the fact that we allowed the second fewest runs in the NL last year. You can see we've got about $26.5 million left at this point for free agents, but honestly, we do want to put about $20 million of that back into our scouting and development budgets eventually. So really looking at about $6.5 million. Pretty content with what our pitching staff looks like at this point, I think. As far as the everyday lineup, basically we're just looking for one more bat, and it can really be a bat that plays any position on the field, quite honestly. I think the main thing is for us to bring on board a decent hitter. If it's a left-handed bat, all the better, because right now our center fielder, Carbajal, our new first baseman, Oliva, and then the youngster Andres Mendez, who's really kind of a DH for us, are the only left-handed bats that we have. But we'll take anyone who's a decent hitter. No one obvious that I feel we have to go after in trade or in free agency right now, but it is only December 1st, so we'll see if maybe someone slips through the Rule 5 draft that looks interesting. And then as we get closer to the season going, we'll see if maybe we can use that last bit of money we have to bring on some talent that can hit a little bit. And not surprisingly, we're not going to be involved in the draft lottery next year, although it was a disappointing season. Not even sure whether we were bad enough to be in the lottery or not, but certainly did not move up. Be able to see what our player development looks like now. Still kind of same as far as the recommended slot amount, so that's another area where we may want to bump up that draft budget a little bit as we get closer to the start of spring training. And we're about to prepare for the Rule 5 draft. Also just wanted to check in on the rookie draft, and we actually moved down to number 13. We were number 12, so we lost a spot. We were part of the lottery, although with a compensatory pick ahead of us, I guess we're actually kind of where we should be. But good to know that we'll be picking at a decent spot, 13th in the draft. Not going to be quite as good as we were in the first couple years when we took over these Pirates and we had the first overall pick and then the fourth overall pick, but certainly much better than last season when we were near the end of the first round. So looking forward to that, but that's obviously still many months away. Right now we hope that in this Rule 5 draft some interesting players fall to us at the number 12 pick. As we've talked about, if there's a bat or even a bat with some potential, would love to have the opportunity to take a look at them at number 12 overall. And we've simmed ahead to our pick. Let's see what the scouting director recommends. He doesn't think we need to do anything, so we'll take a look at who's out there. He's probably right. We're at a point where our roster is certainly stronger than it was 2 or 3 seasons ago when we were in the early stages of this playthrough, but That being said, if there's a player with some potential or a player who we think could give us some optionality in the event of injuries during camp, we'll definitely not be shy about potentially bringing them on board. And there are pretty slim pickings this year in the Rule 5 in our view. We're thinking about taking a flyer on Juan Melendez. He's an 18-year-old who's only spent 1 day on a major league roster. Nice personality, extreme ground ball pitcher who throws in the mid to high 90s. His stuff and his movement are major league level, at least according to our scout. Just does not have a ton of control. Like the fact that he's durable, though. He's got a nice arsenal of 5 major league average or better kind of pitches. He's got the stamina to be a starter. Can see he was good, not great, but good last year in AAA when he went 12-10 with a 3.48 ERA. I tend to think if he ends up making our roster, it's going to be because we had some injuries in spring training. But if we do have more injuries than we would hope, I think I could definitely do worse than Melendez is the 11th or 12th kind of guy on our pitching staff. So we are going to pick him up mainly as an insurance policy, but we are going to make a pick here in the Rule 5 draft, and I don't think there's going to be anyone that we're too interested in the second round here, but I'm assuming the scouting director is still going to say no since he didn't want us to draft anyone in the first round, and that's accurate. We'll take a look through a few more players just to see if there's anyone worth taking a flyer on. But I think the chances of whoever we pick, if we do pick someone with this second pick making our roster coming out of spring training, are pretty low. And we are going to take a total flyer on a player here in the second round. David Cabezas, third baseman, 23-year-old. He's durable. He's a left-handed hitter, which we've been looking for. He's a corner infielder, which we've been looking for. Decent personality. And if he fully develops to the extent that he can, he's a player who can hit a few homers at the major league level. The issue is he's never been above high A ball, and he hit only 242 in high A ball last year. But he did have 24 doubles, 27 homers, and 443 at-bats, so he certainly does have that home run power. It would take a lot of injuries and us really doing nothing at all over the remainder of the offseason for him to have any chance of making our team next year. But I don't think it hurts us to bring him into camp and at least see what he looks like after a little more time with the team. So we are going to go ahead and pick him in the second round of this 2040 Rule 5. And it actually ended up being a pretty active Rule 5 draft. You can see we got Melendez as well as Cabezas. Teams like Oakland and Colorado ended up picking 3 people each. So sometimes you do a Rule 5 and nobody gets picked, but it was a very active Rule 5 draft here in 2040. And as the calendar turns to 2041, take a quick look at our financial situation. Obviously, season ticket prices are locked in. They say we're going to sell 12.5 thousand season tickets, which would be a huge increase from last year. And they claim that we're going to be selling almost 10,000 tickets more a game when all is said and done. I'll believe that when I see it, and a lot of it will be dependent on how we perform on the field. But clearly, if we are selling out pretty much every game, we'll have the opportunity to bump up our ticket prices when the season gets going. But I'm not confident that we're going to be at capacity every game. But clearly, if we can get the stadium about a third filled just with season tickets, that would still be a nice boost for these Pirates. And one of the things that I do talk about being important, that I probably put more importance upon than some people, is the scouting budget. Development, I think everyone kind of gets, is pretty important. When you get to 30 million plus, you kind of get to a point of diminishing returns. But clearly, you want to develop the players that are in your system and that you've picked up through the draft or through trades or through international amateur free agency or through scouting discoveries as well as possible. But the scouting budget is, kind of what lets you get access to from time to time some diamonds in the rough that others don't get. And I tend to put a lot into international scouting and do tend over time to get a fair amount of players in my international complex with a decent amount of potential. Obviously, some of these guys are our one international amateur free agent that we typically sign a year, but some of these guys are scouting discoveries because we invest a decent amount into scouting, and we also invest a good chunk of what we have in scouting into international scouting. But amateurs are also important, as well as minor leagues and major leagues. And we just got a very rare note that is pretty interesting. And the title of the note is Interesting Independent League Player Discovered. I think it's the first time this has happened to me in this playthrough. And the player's name is Alex Perkins, and you can see he's a 25-year-old that looks like he's a 3-star player now with 4-star potential. He's a left-handed batter. He's a corner outfield. He's potentially exactly what we need. And we've got 14 days to sign him, and after that he can sign with other teams. I mean, the issue is he's looking for $8 million a year, so he's not cheap, but he is a solid defensive outfielder potentially, who looks like he can be a really good contact hitter, walk a decent amount, and have a fair amount of power. He's not going to have a ton of extra base hits, and he's going to strike out a little more than average. But he's definitely an interesting prospect. And the fact that we've got 14 days to sign him will give me an opportunity, hopefully, to get a more updated scouting report. Although it's going to take 3 weeks, so we're really not going to get a more updated scouting report. But it's definitely, it would be a very bold move for us to spend more than the 6.5-ish million we have left to sign a generally unproven player like Perkins. But if you believe what the OSA says about him, he definitely could be a decent major league bat. Solid fielder. He's got a little bit of speed. I feel like $8 million is probably a little bit of an overpay for him. But we're going to see if maybe that scouting report comes back a little early. I doubt it will, because that kind of defeats the purpose of us having the 14-day period to sign him where nobody else can. We're probably going to have to operate with less than perfect information, but I do trust our scout. As you saw when we looked at scouting, the only knock against him is that he's only favor tools instead of highly favor tools, but he's legendary or outstanding in everything that he looks at. So Jordan Cavanerio has earned my trust at this point. So we've got an interesting decision to make. Going to wait at least, I'd like to start negotiations with him, I guess. That's the other thing, so we could go back and forth. He wants $8 million a year for 5 years. That's such a bold contract for us to give to somebody who is such an unknown. But by the same token, he kind of fits everything we thought we needed. We need a corner outfielder who's decent defensively. We need a left-handed bat. The guy's durable. It looks like he can be an above-average major league hitter. I'm definitely intrigued. Just for context, going to look at kind of the top free agent outfielders left on the market. Kai-Shek Chiang, looking for 16 million. He's 5 years older. He's fragile instead of durable. I don't think he's quite as good defensively, not quite as fast, and certainly doesn't have the same contact, although he is a proven home run hitter at this point. But he's looking for twice as much as 16 million. Alejandro Osuna, kind of in the same range, but he's a 38-year-old left-handed batter who's wrecked physically, not as good defensively, is proven in terms of his home run power and his eye, but even he's looking for almost 9 million a year. And then Dante Wright, Iron Man, but 31 years old. Again, I don't think is good defensively, not the best personality, very proven home run hitter. Has been a little bit above average as far as an offensive player over the course of his career, and he's looking for 9+ million a year. There's certainly no guarantees with Perkins, but that contact and the ability to draw walks potentially, and it's potentially with both of those because we don't have a ton of scouting accuracy with him, and he's got significant growth to go from kind of being a little bit above average to being a excellent contact hitter and having a very good eye. He's got to improve. He's got to improve in just about everything, but we think he can. I think we're going to throw an offer out there to at least start, because the other thing we do have to think about as an organization, and this is brutally sad, is a member of the Pittsburgh Pirates, or is the GM of the Pirates. But although Isaiah Hill's only been up for 2 years, they've been an incredible 2 seasons. And next year he's expected to make 11.2 million, and then he's going to be over 21 million the other 2 years after that before he becomes a free agent. So we're honestly going to have a tough time keeping him that long. And although we do have some nice talent coming up through our minor league system in the outfield, the trio of Aguilar, Gonzalez, and Raucho, who are 3 of the top prospects in the game and will be coming to help our outfield eventually. I want this team to be as competitive as possible in this upcoming season, given that we've kind of already invested in bringing on Oliva, another really good hitter in a 1-year deal that we're certainly not going to be able to bring him back because he's looking for over $20 million a year. We're kind of fortunate that we've just got him as a 1-year rental. I don't think that I'm going to offer I know I'm not going to offer Perkins $8 million a year, but I want to at least get the conversation started. Since we've only got 2 weeks. I mean, I guess I could offer him a minor league contract, but that's probably just going to piss him off. We'll see how he reacts to the minor league contract when he's looking for $8 million a year. Hopefully it won't cause him to stop negotiations completely. And unfortunately, a week's gone by and we haven't even heard back from Perkins as far as the minor league contract. I think I probably know what that means. We'll go day by day for another couple days. And then we're probably going to have to jump in and offer him a significant major league deal to potentially get something done here. Would love it if our scouting report on him comes in early, but I'm sure it's not going to. Yeah, we're still 2 weeks away, so we're going to have to fly blind on this one. And we've simmed ahead another couple days on Perkins and haven't heard back, so he's still thinking about it, so we can't offer him a major league contract. I probably screwed this up. Or I may have saved myself from potentially paying $8 million a year for a player that I don't really know much about, but I like to do some different things and see how they work out, as those of you who have been watching me over the years know. Oh, and as if things can't get even more interesting, Edgar Flores is going to go see the famous guru Vishnan Hitmihard. So we'll see what happens with Mr. Flores as he goes on his spiritual vision quest. And the good news is we have gotten the scouting report back on Perkins. The bad news is that it's been 2 weeks, so we no longer have sole rights to him, but we've got high scouting accuracy now, and it doesn't look like he's going to be quite the contact hitter that we thought he might, but he still looks like a pretty productive major league hitter who's a good defensive player. Still got to wait to see what he thinks about this minor league deal, and now we might be competing with others for him, but he might. Oh, and his contract demand is supposedly $8.5 million now that he's on the free market, the open market. We'll see what happens. It's definitely intriguing. And not shockingly, Alex Perkins doesn't want to sign the minor league deal, but his rumored demand is supposedly coming down to about $5.5 million. So we're definitely going to try to re-engage with him. Ooh, even better. He's looking for a minor league contract, which becomes a guaranteed 1-year major league contract worth $5.5 if promoted. We're always going to try to save every penny we can, so let's see if we can get him on that for $5 million. He's willing to think about it. You know, the issue with signing a player like this is that if we get him on that $5 million that turns into a major league deal, that kind of becomes his baseline going forward. Now, clearly, we don't have to keep him on the team, but you know, you never get the benefit of kind of having the person at the major league minimum or even some lower arbitration numbers through the course of their career, if I remember correctly. And Alex Perkins seems to like our offer as we get closer to the start of spring training, which is helpful because player development, Alfredo Vasquez, the youngster that we picked up in the trade with the Phillies, I believe. Yeah, with the Phillies, who we think could be a corner outfielder for us. Scouts don't think that he's developing as well as we would have hoped. Jordan Owens also looking weaker, but Isaiah Hill looking better. And the youngster Luis Flores also looking better. We're still obviously very interested to find out, speaking about Flores, what we hear back from Edgar Flores and his trip to the Guru in India. Haven't heard anything on that over the last couple of weeks either. And we've got Alex Perkins on board. And the nice thing about the minor league with major league options, I tend to think we want to be in a situation where I think looking at that bat, if it's what we think it is, kind of want him at the major league level helping us, but it does give us the optionality if we find somebody else that we like, if there's an interesting trade offered to us, or he just doesn't look as good as we think he does when we get a better view of him in spring training, that we can kind of bring him up through our minor league system a little more methodically. And not risk losing him. Although I guess he can opt for free agency if he's not promoted. So not a perfect situation, but at least we got 30 days to potentially keep him in the minors before we have to have him potentially walk away from us. So I'd be interested in hearing what people think about this. Certainly not the direction I thought we would end up going. But the players who were available in free agency didn't impress me that much. I think at, $5 million a year, I think Perkins is interesting. And that lets us we're probably not going to make any other real significant moves here in the off season, so just want to see that takes out all of our money for extensions, puts us down to that 6.5 for free agents, but obviously it would really only be 1.5 if Perkins ends up on the major league roster. Looking at player development, we probably could use a little more in the draft budget. Want to give us a little flexibility. There could be something interesting there at the 13th pick in the draft. Not that an extra couple $100,000 is going to make a huge difference, but we've got money to add players as we get closer to spring training if there's interesting free agents still out there. But I don't mind having Perkins in the organization. I'll tell you that. And we are at the start of spring training. We've got 43 players in camp, including 20 pitchers. We're with our normal 6-man rotation that we use during spring training. Gonzalez, Santana, and Gotti, our usual top 3. Heriberto Rosales, who's been our number 5 the last 3 years, slots in at 6th in the rotation. And then Greg Gaylord, who we traded for in the offseason. And the young phenom Luis Longoria will also be getting some action in the starting rotation here in spring training. We've got 23 position players in camp. Newcomer Adrian Oliva going to be getting some action. Alex Gaines, who we talked about briefly, I believe in our last episode, was a player we have in our minor league system. If he makes it onto the major league team, going to be spending some money on him, but we'll take a look at him in camp as a potentially corner infielder, corner outfielder, or corner infielder, either first or third baseman. And Alex Perkins, who we've spent a lot of time talking about recently, we're going to be testing him out as our leadoff hitter, batting first, obviously being the leadoff hitter, and playing left field against right-handers. And looks like he's going to be batting second against left-handers in spring training. So we may change the lineups a little bit just to get a look at a few other players, but going to have some interesting decisions to make at the end of camp. Hopefully we can remain healthy and then do what we have to do in about a month. And we've made it to the end of spring training, which is positive. Didn't play all that well, 10-14 record, but it's not really about the record in spring training. It's about keeping everybody healthy. And you can see when we look at our roster, the only guy banged up is Adrian Oliva, knee tendonitis, which is going to have a minimal impact on him for 2 weeks. He's obviously expected to be a pretty big part of our team. Hopefully it won't take him a full 2 weeks to recover, but certainly not optimal to have it having a moderate impact on his running. He's not the fastest guy in the world to begin with, particularly at this point. And he'll be having some running issues. Maybe we start him on the 10-day IL just to be really cautious, but we'll see what the roster looks like as we try getting from 40 players down to 26 as we get ready for opening day in just a few days. And we've got the pitching staff down to 14 players, still need to make 2 more cuts. One of them is going to be just kind of the dirty move. Luis Longoria clearly looks like he's ready. Rocketed up after only playing through rookie ball through 2039 through 4 different levels of the minors last year. Was great to very good at all 4 of those levels. Certainly looks like he has the stuff to be successful at the major league level. His control is never going to be that great, but he's the number 12 prospect in the game. But being the Pittsburgh Pirates, with a tiny budget and the fact that we have so many pitchers, notably Gotti and potentially Rosales in our starting rotation, who are very near to the end of their time with us. Same thing with Bobby Gonzalez. The only guy that we really have signed for the longish term right now is Tony Santana, who's going to be making real money. But we're going to send Longoria down to AAA for a few weeks just to get an extra year of control. We're going to be the dirty service time manipulators. And that will put Gaylord into the rotation for at least the first few weeks of the season. So Gaylord, who we picked up in when we traded away Marco Estrada, who was making about $4+ million next year. Gaylord's going to take his number 4 spot in the rotation. Otherwise, it's going to be Santana, Gonzalez, Gotti, and Heriberto Rosales in the 1, 2, 3, and 5 spots. Similar to the last 3 seasons, basically, ever since we took over this team. And then we have 3 guys that we're thinking about for the final cut. Edgar Flores, and we never really heard anything about what happened with him and the Guru, so I guess it worked out okay. He's just a really fun pitcher because his control is just so awful. He walked 64 batters in 72 2/3 innings last year, but he struck out an insane 133 with a 151 batting average against. He's a fan favorite. He's making real money this year, $2.1 million, but he does have 2 option years left. Omar Lopez, another guy that we may send down, making the major league minimum, very average-ish profile. The problem is that he is out of option years, so we do have a risk of losing him if we send him down. And then the last option is the Rule 5 pick that we made last year, Juan Melendez, who actually has a somewhat similar profile, I guess, to Flores. Not as great stuff, but a little bit better control, good personality, ground ball pitcher. He's never pitched at the major league level, 28 years old. He does have 1 day of major league service, but he never actually got in a game. Hasn't been good in spring training. You can see a 6.75 ERA, which was not impressive. Lopez was actually pretty solid. And then Flores was also pretty solid. If Melendez was 3 or 4 years younger, we would definitely keep him, just because I like the durability, like the personality, and I think he can be kind of an interesting pitcher. But we are going to give him a shot out of the bullpen at the major league level, even though he wasn't great in spring training, and even though we're concerned about his control. We are going to waive in DFA Omar Lopez. Hopefully he'll make it to the AAA. But if he doesn't, he's kind of a replacement level pitcher at this point anyways. So even though we've got options on Flores, and we could have just sent Melendez back to, assume that's St. Louis? Yeah. St. Louis, where he come. I have no idea who, Memphis really is affiliated with in 2041 in this mythical world, although I guess that minor league teams probably really aren't moving around. But those are our 6 pitchers. Ochoa's actually slotted into the closer role now. Helton and Macias. Helton, who we picked up in a trade in the middle of last year and became our closer. Macias, who was the free agent signing this year, our top 2 setup guys. Arenales back as a lefty. Flores and Melendez, the 2 guys we were just talking about as long relievers. And Omar Gaona, our lefty specialist. So the pitching was the easy part to decide. Now we've got to get 22 position players down to 14. So the first thing we're going to figure out, and you can see we've made a few of the obvious cuts already, is who our 2 catchers are going to be. Julio Quinones, who we thought might be the backup, actually looks like he's going to be the starter, at least according to our manager. The Iron Man personality is good, or not personality, injury proneness. He's a bit above average defensively, and sadly, his hitting profile of this means he's probably the best hitter of the group. Ishmael Heel, we thought was going to be the starter. He's the best defensive option we have. Just not much of a hitter at this point. And Ron Holloway is a guy who we signed to the minors a little over a month ago, right before spring training started. A little bit above average defensively, a better bat than Heel. You can see this is a guy who actually won a Silver Slugger and is a 3-time All-Star. He's 33 years old now, kind of on the back end of his career. But he knows how to hit major league pitching. And I don't know that Ishmael Heel does. It certainly hasn't in recent years. But I do appreciate Heel's glove. I think we're going to send Heel down to AAA, which is not going to make him happy. But he still has 2 option years left. We're spending close to $2 million a year on him. Our pitching's been so good over the past 2 years, and I think it's really good. I kind of want to see, at least anecdotally, if it drops off at all with somewhat weaker defense from Quinones and Holloway. But I like the fact that I think Holloway can actually hit a little bit. So we're going to send Ishmael Heel back down. It seems like we think he's going to be a starter or a great backup every year. And with some of the moves we make, he always ends up getting demoted to AAA, which has got to be crushing for him, especially now that he's 30 years old. But I have no doubt about the pitching on this team. And if the pitching ends up really weak or weaker than expected, we can always bring Heel back up and move on from Holloway or Quinones if we need to get the little benefit of having a better defensive catcher up. But offense has always been a problem for this team. Even though it's just a backup catcher, I feel a little better with Holloway's potential bat than I do with Heel's right now. And even though he's only going to be with us for 1 year, because we certainly are not going to have the money to be paying him $22 million a year, we're going to be really careful with Adrian Oliva. I think that bat is going to be a very important bat for us at some point. But with the knee tendonitis, it's going to take him 2 weeks to recover from, with a moderate impact on his running. I mean, he is durable in terms of his injury proneness, but I feel like if we put him on the IL right now, he's probably going to miss, less than 10 games, and hopefully he'll be back and ready to go, since we've still got 3 days before the season even starts. Even if it takes him the full 2 weeks to recover. So hopefully we can still get 145 games out of him. And it'll give us the opportunity to look at a couple other players and avoid making one additional cut for an extra week and a half at the major league level. So we're going to be really conservative with Adrian Oliva, and we're going to put him on the 10-day IL to start the year. And then that leaves us with just one more cut that we need to make. And looking at the guys who aren't starters, Tony Cook has been our starting second baseman for the past few years. Was our first All-Star ever back in 2038, won a Gold Glove, 2039. Hasn't hit too much, but I think as a utility infielder, he's going to be a really useful player for us. So he's staying up for the long term. Jose Cuevas is a guy who we might have sent down. This is a guy we picked up in a trade with the Dodgers about a little over a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, actually. He does have 1 option year left, Not the best defensive infielder, but he actually can hit a little bit. So we're going to keep him up for the time being just to see what his bat can do. But he's certainly someone who, when Oliva is ready to come back, his roster spot is in jeopardy. Flavio Avanzi, always viewed him as a utility infielder for us. Not much of a hitter, but better defensively, and he's got that captain personality. Theoretically, his spot could be in jeopardy if Cuevas really hits, but I'm guessing Cuevas really won't get too many opportunities. Jordan Owens is the center fielder that always seems to be on the roster bubble with us. Like his defense, he spent all of last year in AAA, but he's out of option years right now. I don't know if we would send him down. We'd probably try to trade him to clear a little salary space if we needed to move on from him at one point, but we're going to keep him up for now. And then there's Alfredo Velasquez, who we picked up in the trade of Jorge Lebron. Velasquez had 12 homers and 236 at-bats over the second half of last season when he was making his major league debut with the Phillies. But with the fact that we made that signing of Alex Perkins, I just don't know how much playing time that he's going to get at the major league level. You can see he's not in the lineup right now. And he does have one option year left. And he's got some development that he can still do. Now, granted, to be fair, Mr. Perkins still has some development that he needs to do, and we're going to be trying to get him to do that development at the major league level, since if we keep him on the roster, we're going to be paying him $5 million this year. But I think Perkins is a more useful player for us right now, with that left-handed bat that's developed a bit more than Velasquez at this point. So Velasquez is going to be our final cut. Send him down to AAA. We are going to have another decision to make in probably a week and a half, 2 weeks or so, when hopefully Oliva is back and healthy. But for the time being, Mendez will be our DH, the left-handed hitter. Alex Gaines is going to be playing first, and Chris Gomez slots in at third. Against left-handers, it's Cuevas, the guy whose bat we want to see at DH. Gaines still at first, and Gomez still at third. We may actually just change that a little bit, although I think those guys are both pretty much all... Yeah, there's not really much development or any development that either of them need to do, so that's fine to go with what the manager does. But we've got the roster down to our 26 players as we get ready to kick off this season. That money is going to move away very rapidly because at this point, a couple of guys who made the team, notably Alex Perkins and Alex Gaines, neither of them is on the 40-man roster yet. So, or actually Gaines may be on the 40-man roster. I think we did move him there. Yeah, we did move Gaines to the 40-man roster. We are going to actually now put Perkins on the 40-man roster. So with those two guys, though, the money we have available is going to go right down to very little, which, again, could encourage us as we kind of spend some time offline figuring out what our minor league teams are going to look like. That could encourage us to actually trade away somebody like Ishmael Heel, who's making $1.8 million. Oh, and actually, as I'm talking about Ishmael Heel, certainly our new backup catcher Ron Holloway is not on the 40-man roster either. So we're going to put him on the 40-man roster too. So it's going to be interesting. You can see we're seem to be on pace to sell the 12,500-ish season tickets that we were a while ago. We will see how the team starts off the season in our next episode when we, to mix metaphors, kick off the 2041 season. Fan interest is pretty much as high as it's ever been, so I think there is an opportunity for us to potentially, if we're playing well, boost those ticket prices a bit to hopefully juice our revenue per game a bit. It doesn't seem like Mr. Nutting is inclined to move our budget up by more than $8 million a season, but after two $8 million moves in our first 2 years, followed by only a $4 million move last off season, an $8 million boost will feel pretty good if we're able to get that after this season. And hopefully if we're able to get that after this season, it'll mean that we had a pretty successful season on the field, which is really what it's all about. And we will begin that quest towards a hopeful playoff appearance in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.